We're in the Capitoline Museums in Rome, and we're standing under the giant equestrian sculpture of Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius was an emperor in the 2nd century CE. He was known as one of the good emperors.
That's not to say he wasn't a brutal emperor, as many were, but nevertheless, Machiavelli included him among the 5 good emperors. We are very lucky to be able to stand in front of this sculpture, which is some 1900 years old.
And it's a type of sculpture, a figure of a leader on a horse, which was incredibly important for the ancient Romans and remained important as a type of sculpture for centuries after.
And in fact became an important model in the Renaissance and subsequently.
We could think of the equestrian sculpture by Donatello in Padua or the equestrian sculpture by Verrocchio in Venice. So this term equestrian comes from the Latin word equus for horse. So an equestrian sculpture refers to a figure on a horse. And in the case of Marcus Aurelius, we're looking at something significantly over life size. He's made of bronze, and he was once gilded. So we have to imagine him gleaming in the outdoor sunlight instead of in this museum environment.
In ancient Rome, it was important to portray the likeness of the emperor, and these were standardized representations so that they could be distributed throughout the empire and recognized in an era before photography, before mass media.
Art historians and archaeologists have identified 4 main types of sculptures of Marcus Aurelius, 2 when he was younger, before he assumed the role of emperor, and 2 after that. There's some debate about whether this is type 3 or type 4.
And there's over 100 sculptures of Marcus Aurelius that survive. And because of this typing, it's very easy to recognize him, especially this mature type with that long beard.
In the long curly hair that comes down in a kind of bowl-like fashion around his head.
His eyelids are also quite heavy and distinctive.
So here we're looking at Marcus Aurelius, a bit incomplete. In his left hand, he would have held reins that no longer exist. And of course, we're looking at him with the gilding mostly gone.
It's such a magnificent sculpture. It is so expressive. And the artist or artists, whoever they were, has been able to create this kind of wonderful contrast between the face of Marcus Aurelius, who is steady and completely in control, in charge, and then the energy of the horse, who is held in check by the emperor.
We also have noticed that he's not wearing military garb. He's in civilian garb, which is interesting. We know that Marcus Aurelius did at one point celebrate a triumph, that is a kind of entry into the city and procession related to a military victory. But in the case of this sculpture, we're not sure which occasion this was for. We're not even sure where it was originally placed.
The first time we can locate the sculpture is in the 9th century in front of the Lateran Palace, not too far away in the city of Rome.
An important location that was originally the residence of the popes.
And then centuries later, during the Renaissance, it was moved to the Capitoline Hill and placed in the center of the Campidoglio, that is, the plaza at the top of the hill, designed by Michelangelo.
And today, because of conservation issues, we're looking at it protected from the elements here in a beautiful room designed especially for it in the Capitoline Museum.
And just outside the museum is a copy in that location that Michelangelo had placed the sculpture.
So Marcus looks out to his right. He stretches out his right hand. We also notice that the right front hoof is raised. So there's been some conjecture about whether there was a figure of an enemy beneath the horse or perhaps a figure pleading for mercy. A possible precedent for that comes from another relief sculpture of Marcus Aurelius here in the Capitoline Museum, where we do see an enemy pleading for his life and the emperor granting clemency.
I want to go back to that raised right leg, because what that means is that all of the weight of this sculpture, the enormous body of the horse and the enormous body of the emperor, are placed on only a tripod. And so This is a bit of an engineering marvel. And in the 15th century, during the early Renaissance, when artists and patrons once again wanted to produce equestrian sculptures, being able to lift that foreleg proved to be a significant challenge.
Casting in bronze generally at this scale was knowledge that had been largely lost in the Middle Ages and had to be reinvented, rediscovered in the Renaissance. This was a very complicated undertaking that took many skilled craftsmen to complete.
Its naturalism is so persuasive. Look at the way that under the neck, the folds of skin come together as the horse's head is being drawn back by reins held by the emperor.
We also notice the bulging muscles of the horse, the veins of the horse. There's a deep knowledge of the anatomy of a horse in addition to the anatomy of the human body. Now, as we're struck by the naturalism here, we almost don't notice that the figure is much larger than it should be for the size of the horse.
You can probably most easily recognize this disjunction in scale by looking at just how low Marcus Aurelius' feet are to the ground. And I think most art historians assume that this was done purposefully in order to emphasize the figure, Marcus Aurelius.
The expressiveness of the horse is an incredibly important part of what makes this sculpture as successful as it is.
So as I stand here in this postmodern architectural space in the Capitoline Museum, I'm trying to retrieve how I might have looked at this 1900 years ago. Would this have stood on top of a triumphal arch? Would it have stood on a pedestal in a forum? What would have surrounded it? What is the context in which it would have been seen?
The context in which the Romans placed their sculptures were incredibly important and often in conversation with architecture and other sculptures around it. So we are indeed seeing this very differently, but we're also very lucky that we still have it. And the reason that we do still have it is because during the Middle Ages, the sculpture was referred to as the Emperor Constantine, the first Christian Roman emperor. And so we think perhaps this survived because of that mistaken identity.
And the rarity of a bronze sculpture of this size is simply because it is made of bronze, a very valuable material that could be reused. It could be made into weapons. It could be made into other sculptures. It could be made into coins.
And it's a great reminder that what we study is only what remains.
And I am so glad Marcus Aurelius remains.